Welcome everyone to the 11:15 session of our ISSA Virtual Staffing Conference. This session is Strategies for a Changed World, presented by David Cerns of Haley Marketing. A warm welcome to you, David.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here, and we'll go live on camera so I can say hello to everybody. I really had hoped to be doing this with all of you face to face, not over the interwebs. But thanks everybody for joining us for today's session. So, who could have thought that we'd be having a conference over the internet, that I'd be talking to you from, here's irony, sunny Buffalo, New York, while we're looking at ways to really deal with the changes that have happened in the world, in the staffing industry, and in our individual businesses. And so what we're going to do today is we're going to take a step back in time and kind of recap some of the events that have happened. Then we're going to look really back in time at some ideas for some really smart people about how you get through times like this. And then we're going to bring it forward with some specific things that you can take home from today's session. As we go along, if you have questions, please use the question box. Feel free, by the way, Laura, to interrupt me if there are questions that need to be answered along the way. And I'd be happy to jump in. If not, we'll also have Q&A time at the end. And there's a little surprise coming up for you at the end of the show, so don't leave early. I can't wait to show that to you. All right, let's jump in. So, flashback, January 2020. All of us are thinking, this is the start of a new year, the start of a new decade. It's going to be the roaring 20s again. We are so optimistic. We're in a time of record low unemployment, record high numbers for the staffing industry, and we absolutely did not see this coming. And then we saw the news, and Wuhan, China. Who knows where Wuhan, China is? Most of us didn't. And they had this disease going around, and it looked a little scary, but that's something you see on the news, and they have things in other parts of the country, and our natural reaction is it's not going to affect us. It won't happen here. And then it did. It hit Seattle. It hit New York City. And we watched the news, and it was almost like being in a bit of a movie, and you're just saying, well, again, I hope everybody else is going to be all right, because mentally we're still saying it's not going to happen here. It's not going to happen to me, not my business. It's not going to happen to Illinois, not going to happen to Wisconsin, not going to impact the entire staffing industry. And then it did. And then March arrived. And our reaction was, this can't be real. And now it feels like we went from watching a movie to being in one. All of a sudden, we're in this unprecedented time. We're being told, stay in your home. Don't go to work. Businesses have to close. We're being told, wear masks. We're being told you can get infected just from picking up the groceries. A lot of fear, a lot of uncertainty. And still in our minds, we're having a hard time processing it. And that changed maybe the second week of March. We started realizing what was going to happen. We started seeing unemployment numbers go from 3.5% to skyrocketing. We saw clients canceling assignments and putting direct hires on hold. And most of us in the staffing industry and who work with the staffing industry, the reaction is just, what am I going to do? How do I get through this? Now, we got hit with an incredible double whammy. First side is, of course, coronavirus. We know we got hit with this disease that impacted our economy, but something that made the news, but not quite as much, is we also got hit with oil price wars. And now we had a situation where Russia and Saudi Arabia decided to play a game of chicken to see what they could do with pricing, and they both lost. They both drove prices, and at one point in March, you may have seen that the price of crude was actually at like negative $40 a barrel. I didn't even understand what that meant. So I did a little research to try to figure it out. And basically that meant there was so much oil sitting in supply waiting to be processed that nobody wanted more oil coming out of the ground. And in order to get that oil out of the ground and do something with it, the people taking it out, in fact, had to pay the next stage of the supply line to take it instead of that stage buying it from them. Crazy situation. I don't know if it's unprecedented, but pretty close. But while a decline in oil prices is great for us at the gas pump. It's really bad for American businesses when energy prices are too low. It hurts not just the oil industry, but it actually hurts lots of industries. So we got this 1-2 punch. And on March 17th, just a couple of months ago, the really smart people at Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs, they declared we were in a global recession. Now, normally, to be in a recession, you have to have 2 quarters in a row of declining gross domestic product, declining GDP. So this is the first time in my lifetime that anybody's ever been able to declare it within 2 weeks that we were in a recession, because what the analysts at these organizations saw is that we had fallen so steeply and so far that gross domestic product was going to be down and down for some time to come. And of course, that was a great way to celebrate St. Patrick's Day. We can do our dance to know that we are now in the first recession that the world has seen since 2009. And the staffing industry, for those of us who have been through recessions, we know what that means. The R word is back. And the R word is not a word that we're very fond of. It's a word that's scary. It's a word that means lots of bad things. We'll talk about those in a second. But for many of you, this may be your first time experiencing the R word recession. It's maybe your first time seeing what happens to the staffing industry when business gets cut back. And so let's kind of take a look at recessions. So typically what causes a recession, I won't read all these things, I'm just gonna put a whole bunch of things on the screen for you. There's lots of drivers of recessions. And global pandemic isn't really on there, but it did cause lots of these other things. It caused reduced government spending, reduced corporate and consumer spending in a big way. It caused a loss of confidence in the markets. It caused a 10,000 point crash in the Dow. We haven't seen that much of a fall in housing prices yet. Probably gonna see that in some markets, but definitely we're seeing declining prices for some goods, not at the grocery store, but at the gas pump and in other places. The last two are past recessions, bad management practices. This is the early 90s recession that happened because of the credit unions, and asset bubbles bursting was when the housing market collapsed in 2008 and caused that downturn. But this recession is something, this last one I'm going to put on the screen right now is something different. Fear. Yes, we have a lot less business being done. Yes, there's dramatically less consumer spending, but fear is paralyzed the economy. It did for all of March. We were almost like a deer in headlights. We didn't know what to do. And the question about how long will this last? And I heard in the morning news this morning, will it be a V-shaped downturn, which means quick downturn, quick back up? Will it be a U, down and across and then back up? I heard somebody describe it, no, it'll be the Nike swoosh. Never heard that one before, but that probably is the worst one for the staffing industry, which means sharp down and long, slow recovery, which is actually sort of a little like the last recession, where we fell down pretty hard in 2008, and a slow recovery, but at least one that lasted 11 years. No one knows. Fear, to a large point, will dictate, when do we get back to spending money? When do we go to stores? When do we go to restaurants? When are we comfortable coming back to the office or the factory? How much are we buying, which then in turn drives how much are we manufacturing? And that, of course, drives the staffing industry. So we don't know what's going to happen with fear. We don't know what's going to happen at all, but watching the news, watching social media where you see fear running rampant can kind of give us a leading indicator of how long this thing's going to last. And what happens in a recession? Well, a lot of it's pretty obvious. People and companies spend less. I know I just got a credit card bill yesterday and I smiled, not because I got a bill, because it was so much less. We're not eating out in restaurants. We spent a lot less. We're not shopping as much. So that's good news for our personal financials, not good news for the economy and not good news for the staffing industry. And when people are spending less, companies are spending less. A lot of companies have put all their capital purchases on hold. And that less spending also impacts our industry because it results in a big drop in business activity. And as you guys know all too well, if there's less work getting done, there's less need for workers. So first thing that happens is they cut hours for people. Then they let go of the temps because they don't need them. They cut the flexible workers. Unemployment rises. Well, we've got, what, 35 million people on unemployment right now? We tend to see after that, bad debt and loan defaults increase. Bad news for the financial industry. And prices and interest rates tend to fall. And usually prices fall because of lower demand, law of supplies and demand, and interest rates fall because the Federal Reserve cuts them to try to stimulate the economy. But the Fed already cut the interest rates to basically zero. They don't have any more to cut. No, in Japan, they've actually gone to negative interest rates. Another one I have a hard time understanding. And we're not going to get into an economics discussion. But these are the impacts we're seeing. There's some debate right now whether or not we're going to see further deflation, reduction in prices, or we'll see inflation because the government's throwing so much money into the economy without anything to back it up, essentially devaluing the dollar, and will that cause inflation? Right now, even the experts don't agree what's going to happen. Well, we don't have to be economic experts. We really just have to focus on what's probably going to happen to the staffing industry. So if there are hiring freezes, and many of your clients probably have hiring freezes right now, that means direct hire becomes non-existent for those companies. And we have to find new clients or new services to provide those clients that have hiring freezes. They let the temps go. So we have to find other ways that they're going to want to use staffing. Job orders become scarce. If you were not in the industry before 2010, you've probably never seen a time where you had to fight for a job order. And particularly if you've only been in the industry in the last 5 or 6 years, almost every employer had a hiring need. And it was a much bigger challenge to find talent than it was to find a job order. So now as salespeople, as businesses, and as recruiters, we have to go back to selling the value of staffing services more effectively. And this is the number that's the most scary in today's presentation, and the number that I don't want any of you to become a victim of. In the 2001 recession, in the 2008-2009 recession, now Haley Marketing, we've been around since 1996. We've seen multiple recessions in this industry, and in the last 2 recessions, about 30% of staffing companies did not survive. So what we're going to talk about today is how you survive, what the winners do differently, the strategies they use. We're going to look back to the last 2 big recessions, and we're going to look at a lot of different resources to get ideas. But also, you know, everything I've said so far is really negative, and I don't want to be a downer on a beautiful sunny day. It's not all bad news. There are some industries right now that are exploding. Healthcare, to an extent, now right out of the gate in the recession, it exploded because they needed respiratory care people like crazy. There were more demands for equipment. Healthcare now is sort of pivoting. In some parts of the country, where I am in New York, particularly I'm the other end of my state, New York City, the demand for critical care beds is down. So hospitals are hurting because they put all their elective surgeries on hold. Well, now they're bringing those back. And so while in the interim, the hospitals are hurting a lot, there's going to be so much pent-up demand for elective surgery that we are guessing the hospitals and healthcare will do very well, which means the entire healthcare supply chain is going to need people. So that's a place that's going to continue to do well as healthcare rebounds. When interest rates fall, the mortgage industry tends to do well. It's done well in past recessions. IT, depending on who your clients are, tends to be pretty recession-proof. And this one, companies in cybersecurity, companies in digital transformation, companies in business process automation are going to see a huge increase in demand. I think IBM just announced yesterday they bought some big robotic process automation company that essentially can automate manual processes because they recognize that every business is going to think about, hey, more people are going to keep working remotely. More businesses are going to want to improve process, and that means there's going to be demand for those kinds of IT projects. So if you're in IT staffing, you got to start thinking about how are my clients going to pivot their IT needs? And if all I did yesterday was ERP systems, maybe I may need to pivot to be doing more process automation or cybersecurity. If I did more just web dev, well, maybe I'm going to be focused more on mobile dev or on more app development, or maybe just the process automation of my clients' online businesses. Collections companies, if there's going to be more companies and individuals going out of business, collections tends to do well. Consumer staples, you know, clearly if you've tried to buy toilet paper, you know consumer staples are no pun intended, flying off the shelf. I saw a stat in mid-March that grocery stores in 2 weeks' time sold 4 months worth of inventory. I saw the CEO of Clorox interviewed about 2 weeks ago saying, folks, I'm trying. We are running 3 shifts. We can't manufacture fast enough. Discount retailers do well. In 2009, 2010, Walmart exploded. They were already a really dominant company, but they exploded. Who's exploding this time? Amazon. I mean, they've already exploded, but they're exploding even more. And other online retailers, online e-commerce, are going up 100% plus. Facebook just announced a program to help small businesses to take their entire inventory and create a digital store. So companies that can sell online and sell cheaper will continue to do well. Sin industries tend to do well. Usually there's 3 that do well in recessions: alcohol, tobacco, and gambling. Needless to say, this one, we can't go to the casinos, so those are hurting, but alcohol consumption, yeah, folks, we're drinking a lot of wine and everything else. It's up, I think it's 200% plus. I don't know what tobacco is doing, but typically that goes up in recessions as well. And the last one that I didn't understand until about 3 or 4 weeks ago, I saw another economist interviewed. The last one is cosmetics companies tend to do well. And I didn't get this. Ladies and guys who use cosmetics, you might be able to help me understand. At least I didn't understand why this particular segment tended to be recession proof. And then somebody explained to me, I saw a webinar, and the speaker said, in times when people are financially hurting, they can't do the big things. We can't go on vacations. We can't go out for fine dining. But as human beings, we need to have things to feel good about. So people tend to buy more of small luxuries. So buying a high-end lipstick might be a small luxury somebody purchases to make themselves feel good. So if you've got clients that sell luxury services, they may need to look at small luxuries. You may even consult with them. Hey, can you offer small luxury versions of your products? Because that will drive demand. And the more they have demand, the more they're going to have talent to manufacture and to distribute. So as a staffing company, you want to look at sectors, not just essential industries that are opening back up in Illinois and Wisconsin, but businesses that are likely to do well in the coming weeks and months and years. All right, so what we're going to spend the majority of our time, we've got about another hour together, and what we're going to focus on is strategies to survive a recession. So I'm going to do my best to avoid the words coronavirus and COVID-19. I probably will say them a couple of times, but I don't know about you. I'm sort of sick of hearing them. But I'm not sick at all of thinking about who are the winners and who are the losers in times of this. And how do you make sure that your business is not one of the 30%? So in order to develop this presentation, in order to help our clients get through the downturn that we knew was going to be coming, about the first week of March, I jumped on the internet and I said, you know what? There's people who have been there, done this before. They know how to get through severe economic downturns. And let's go look at who those smart people are and see what advice they have to share. And so I'm going to give everybody a heads up. Today's presentation is a summary of some long format, really good articles. In order to put together this content, I went to Harvard Business Review. I went to a number of management consulting firms. And I went to as many different websites as I could to find ideas not just for staffing, but ideas that companies use to get through tough times. So I first took all those long format, and if you've ever read a Harvard Business Review article, they're not usually the most exciting reading. They're very long articles. They're usually kind of dry, but they're filled with great ideas. So I summarized them, and I put together a long article, about 20 pages, with my synopses of all of my research. I'll show you at the end, as part of my surprise at the end, how to get those synopses. Today's presentation is actually a synopsis of the synopsis, with each of those articles getting one slide in today's presentation, because there's too much content to do more. So if you'd like to read the longer format, 20-page version, stick around till the very end where I'll show you how to get it. All right, so let's jump in. Let's go to Harvard Business Review. And I've got 3 articles I want to share with you from HBR. The first was titled, How to Survive a Recession and Thrive Afterwards. And I think this was written in 2010 as the authors were studying companies that went through the Great Recession and how they came out. And their advice was, number one, to deleverage your business before a downturn. And essentially that means get out of debt. We didn't have time to plan for this downturn. So there was no time to really refinance your business and to deleverage. But there is rule number one we can focus on now. It's don't run out of money. If you've got clients where maybe you're going through an MSP or a VMS and you actually look at your profit margin and it's so razor slim, you're not making anything. Well, those may or may not be clients you can afford to keep right now. You may need to find ways to increase your margins or to cut unprofitable customers because you can't afford to run out of money. You want to look to see how can I maximize my margins without beating up my candidates or without losing business to my clients because I'm not priced effectively. If you got a PPP loan, you got to decide how much of that money that you're going to get back, essentially that's free cash into your business, how much will you save for a rainy day and how much will you invest to drive growth? But you want to make sure you don't run out of money. Second strategy is to focus on how you make decisions. And this is more for companies with multiple branch offices. If you've got one office, this is sort of irrelevant, although you might think of this in terms of the CEO making decisions versus recruiters and salespeople making them. But if you've got multiple operations in Illinois and Wisconsin or throughout the country, and you have to make decisions, centralized decision making is really good when you have hard decisions to make. So if I've got to make decisions like, do we go into a new line of business? Do we cut staff? Do we fire clients? Well, sometimes if they're really hard decisions, they need to be made centralized because you need the people at the highest levels in your organization part of the decision-making process. But there are other times where it pays to be nimble. And if you can respond fast, you're going to win. In this economy, you're going to see lots of companies that have needs for just-in-time talent. So if there are decisions like, should we take on this? Can we manage the risk of this particular assignment? Yes or no? If you've got to get that centralized and go back to your risk managers and wait, you might lose out to somebody who can be more nimble. So working to be able to make those decisions in the branches or have a recruiter or a salesperson make decisions, empowering people, empowering offices, allows you to be faster. And in the coming months, particularly in the very short term, speed is going to win. So if you want more job orders, focus on your ability to make decentralized and know where people have the authority to make decisions and where they don't have the authority. If you need to cut costs, the smartest companies will look beyond layoffs. So if you think about cutting people, what you're doing is you're limiting your physical capacity. Every body you fire is someone who presumably was doing something valuable. And as you recover, as clients start to hire again, as they need staffing and they need recruiting, they need payrolling, they need other services. If you fired people, you've limited your capacity to provide service. And so now you can't respond and you may lose the business. And the companies that survived the best out of the Great Recession, they cut their costs, but they did it by creating operational efficiencies, streamlining service processes so that they had the people to do more with less. They may not have hired coming back out of it, but they resist cutting people as long as they could. And we're seeing some staffing companies that are fighting like hell not to fire anybody, and others who sort of knee-jerk fired a lot of people. And those companies are going to have a hard time recovering. And this is another time that's sort of related to that process improvement, is to invest in technology. Investing in ways to make your business more transparent to your clients and your candidates, so you can really show them how you're partnering with them. Your candidates who are available to work, you're accelerating your speed, you're making your business more flexible, more efficient. You're lowering your cost per candidate. Maybe you're using programmatic job advertising, so every dollar you spend with a job board, you're getting a greater return on. Maybe you're optimizing a website to maximize the number of people who are responding to you. Every visit the site, you actually do something, take an action. Maybe you're adding process automation tools in so that you're improving service to your clients and your candidates without needing more recruiters to send emails, send texts, and make calls. Using technology to make your business better is key to surviving. So this particular article, those are the primary 4 strategies that they had recommended. Now you're going to see as I go through these additional articles, there's some redundancy because a lot of the authors recommending similar things. And I chose to leave the redundancy in the presentation because in my mind, if you get multiple really smart people giving the exact same advice, it tells you it's probably pretty good advice. So the second article is entitled Roaring Out of a Recession. And you're going to see some similarities, but it's sort of a different way of looking at it from this article and the first. And this particular author they studied the growth rates of companies coming out of the recession and also how far companies fell during the recession. And I apologize, I can't quote all the statistics from memory. That longer format article I mentioned, the statistics are in it. But what they found was that some companies get very defensive. You know, they're the companies that are like an armadillo. They curl up into a ball, they get very defensive, they just cut costs, and they're sort of like, we're gonna cut to the bone and we'll ride this thing out. We'll get through the storm by minimizing expenses. It works. Those companies do succeed. However, they tend to fall farther than the next two categories, and they tend to take dramatically longer to recover. The second category are companies that get really aggressive. They're like, wow, this is the best opportunity ever. Prices for things are down. My competitors are weak. There's great talent in the market. There may be less demand, sure, but I can go after it because we're so good, we can win. And they go full steam ahead. They're sort of the damn the torpedoes kind of people. The problem with these people is sometimes they become blinded, they become myopic. They get so excited about the opportunities that they miss the torpedoes. They consciously ignore them, or they have a decision-making bias that they've decided to move forward, and that makes them believe that the obstacles don't apply to them. And these companies, interestingly enough, they're more likely to explode and get hit by a torpedo, but they are also more likely to fall less than the defensive companies and recover faster. But there's a third type of company that's best of all. And in this article, they referred to them as progressive companies. And progressive companies, they do a balance. They sort of find this optimal mix between being defensive and getting aggressive. And so what do? First thing they do is they look at every piece of their business model. How do they do everything? Every process, every service they offer, and they analyze it. Do these services make sense now? And will they make sense 6 months from now and 3 years from now? Are we delivering it in the best way possible? Are we as efficient as we can be? Are we delighting our clients and candidates in the best ways possible? They look at every aspect of their business model to then make strategic determinations. Where they can, they cut costs permanently by making those process improvements. And this is another author who's saying the same thing. Then they invest. They get aggressive about developing new markets that build upon their assets, that build upon their strengths. They don't just jump into the water in some hot new skill discipline. In fact, that's usually a big mistake for staffing companies. Just because the discipline's doing well, they focus on their core strengths. They said, if we're this good here, how do we get this good by building on it? How do we become the best in the world in the kind of staffing and recruiting that we do? How do we enlarge our competitive advantage and then take that to new kinds of clients or maybe to a new geographic market? So we're building on our strengths, not just trying something new. These companies increase their spending on research and development and marketing. They do more to invent new products. They do more to promote themselves to their target clients more aggressively. They make sure they're more visible. And you're going to hear me say that a lot in today's presentation. So in this article, this balance is about cutting in ways that make you more efficient and building in ways that capitalize on opportunities. All right, let's move on to our third article. Oh, and I apologize, the build was wrong on this one, so let me put everything up on the slide so it doesn't look funny. Third article is about marketing in a downturn. And this one's really about understanding recession psychology. So typically, in your staffing company, if you think about going after your target clients, some of you will say, my target client is everybody, they all use staffing. Some of you will say, well, no, my target client are businesses in a certain vertical market, businesses of a certain size. My target market are certain departments, and I use all kinds of demographic factors to divvy up the marketplace, to sort of think about if the marketplace is a pie, what's my slice of the pie that I own? And we use that demographic criteria to define that slice. And the authors of this article said, in a recession, a lot of times those typical demographic breakdowns go out the window because now we have to look at psychology. And what happens is you're going to have clients that react differently. Some clients are those armadillos. They curl up into a ball and they're not going to do business with you. Some clients are the damn the torpedoes. And the authors of the article said there's actually 4 buyer segments. And let me give you a quick caveat. The article was not written about staffing. It actually was not written about business to business selling. It was written about consumer goods. But when I found it, I'm like, you know what? This may be about you and me buying stuff at the grocery store or at the department store, but it also applies to business and it applies to staffing services. So if you look at your clients, there are some that are slam on the brakes. You know they should be investing in talent. They should be top grading. They should be capitalizing on opportunities, but they just won't do it. They're like, nope, we're cutting everything. Corporate said we have to cut everything. So we're not going to spend a lot of time in the short term with those companies. They're not great prospects. The next group are the pain but patient. Sure, they're hurting. They acknowledge the reality of the marketplace, but they also acknowledge the reality of that things will get better. They're going to be the planners. They may not use a lot of your services today, but they may work with you on the plans for tomorrow. These may be your best prospects for recovery because as Illinois and as Wisconsin come back online, these are going to be the companies that are probably going to be first to ramp up or need a strategic plan to ramp up. They may go from running 1 shift to 2 shifts to 3 shifts. They may start to implement a hybrid workforce, some in the office, some remote. And who's better to consult on that than a staffing company that's an expert in talent management? The third category are the comfortably well off. And these are your clients who are booming. They're in an essential industry. They're in an industry that's about to boom because of the nature of the economy. So these are businesses that have to keep focusing on growth and may have unforeseen demand. They need your services. They need to figure out how to staff. They need new strategies for attracting talent. They need to figure out how to win people back off of unemployment. And the last group is probably the least relevant to the staffing industry, but the last group from this article are the live for the today people. And these are the sort of the deniers. I don't see anything wrong. I'm just going to keep running my business the way I'm running it. In the staffing industry, we're seeing some people who are live for today that there's sort of a combination of slam on the brakes and live for today. They're sort of in denial that they need to do anything because they're just thinking, well, this will come back. The companies that slam on the brakes and expect that this will come back are actually the most likely to go out of business. Your clients who are just live for today are the most likely to go out of business. And they might be good in the very short term for using staffing. Be cautious of getting behind on payables or receivables, with this group. So with the audiences, in this article, they talk about understanding the reasons people buy stuff, the rationale for purchase. So we buy goods because they're essential. And ideally, you want everybody to view their staffing needs, their talent as essential. And I'm sure they do for their core workers, but do they view their temps as essential? Do they view that next hire as essential? In selling today, you have to work with people to show them how the hire is essential, how bringing the temps in to capitalize on the opportunity to improve service to customers is essential. The more you can make your services essential, or your role that you're playing for that company as a consultant and advisor essential, the more business you're going to get. The second rationale for purchases are those indulgences, the little extras. I think this may be the hardest to mentally think about coming to the staffing industry. Like, I'm not going to get a temp because it's an indulgence, but I might go after a better candidate because I can right now. I can afford to go after the best. I might, if you're selling to a small business, take that PPP money and invest it in talent, and a staffing company can help me find that short-term talent to use. So there's lots of potential little indulgences or little extras that businesses might do. I wouldn't call them indulgences, but it's more top grading talent. Bringing people in to capitalize on opportunity might be the analogy we could use for indulgences. The third category are postponables. And those are expenses people think they don't need right now. And what you want to do in selling is talk to people about their business plans. Where do they see their business going? And the things that they're considering as postponables, like that project they're not going to take on, we'll talk with them about, well, you know, we've got some amazing talent, and if you take it on now, I can get you A+ people that if you wait 6 months to start this, those people aren't going to be available. And now you're going to get A's if you're lucky, B+ if you're not, and B's might be all that's left. So get the A+ and take that on. Don't make it a postponable, make it essential, because you'll be so much more successful doing it now. And the last category of purchase is the expendable. I really don't need that. And so if a client has something, or an area, a process, a business function, people they view as purely expendable, you're going to lose those people, and it may be hard to win them back. So when you're selling or you're marketing, you're trying to make yourself more essential. Essential in the services you provide and how they use staffing, but also essential in the role you provide. You may be helping people by offering lower cost versions of your services, maybe a temporary discount. I've seen some companies that are using their PPP money to actually place temporary workers at dramatically reduced markups, with the caveat that, hey, this is only going to be for the next 4 weeks, 6 weeks. Or, you know, we're requiring a 3-month assignment and we're giving you a break on the first month because we got some money and we're actually giving the money to you. Some people are saying, we're not going to give it to you, the client, we're going to give it to the candidates, because we have to pay them more to get them off of unemployment. So we're going to really reward the candidates for taking this work. So you're offering variations, and that's sort of our analogy for lower cost versions of indulgences. But the biggest thing you want to work on with your clients is increasing the urgency of the postponables. It's consulting. Why staffing now? Why this project now? And really training your team how to have strategic conversations with clients about their business needs, and then equating it back to how staffing helps them to accomplish that business need through hiring, through temporary help, through outsourced projects, or whatever other services that you can offer. All right, so we're going to switch from Harvard Business Review now to management consulting, and the next organization we're going to look at is advice from Bain & Company. And here you're going to start to see some real overlap in advice from prior authors. So this is an article I found. It was actually written in 2018 when the consultants at Bain said, you know, we're overdue for a recession. So how can companies take the lead during a downturn? What they said about the next recession, now they weren't talking about this current pandemic, they didn't know that was coming, but they knew we were going to have a recession. They said it's going to be the end of non-tech businesses. And we're in the staffing industry, we're in a relationship-driven business. How many of us are ready to be in a technology-driven business? Some of you probably very much so, some of you maybe not at all. I know Uber was trying to make a play into the staffing industry with their Uber Works. And I can disclose this now. They called us to help with marketing and said, hey, we're here to disrupt the staffing industry. You want to help us do that? And we said, no, those are our customers. I'm very happy that they announced 2 days ago that they're closing Uber Works. But that doesn't mean it's the end of online staffing. Quite the contrary, online staffing is going to continue to grow. Can you offer a digital transformation of your business, some form of online staffing, better technology to provide service, to marry relationships to people, to humanize technology by putting the things together? You're going to have to do that in the years ahead. It's going to be the end of low interest rates. So we're at near zero, but that can't last. So as interest rates go back up, the cost of capital is going to go up. So if you need money to do things, this is a good time to borrow as long as you're profitable. For your clients, this is a good time for them to take on those capital projects, because never again in their business lives are they likely to see a time when they can fund the project as cheaply as they can today. So as their businesses start to recover, you may be talking to them and say, hey, with interest rates low, are you going to take on any of these big projects? Will you need engineers, IT people? Will you need fill-ins to free your key people? The end of low interest rates means more staffing. So what do winning companies do differently? Here's that advice again. Restructure costs before the downturn without cutting muscle. Cut your expenses, cut the fat. If you haven't already done that, which you probably already have, you still want to look at, are there any things we're doing where we could eliminate that expense because it's not really driving growth, supporting operations, improving service. Make sure the financial house is in order. Every client, is it profitable? Is our balance sheet as strong as it can be? Invest selectively. Where are the opportunities, again, that build on your company's strengths to build around the markets, the clients where you're already really good. Maintain your marketing. People at Bain & Company said this is absolutely the wrong time to cut marketing expenses, because if you become less visible, the market's perception is you've gone out of business. This is time to focus on your customer experience. You have to be seen as the best in your marketplace, dramatically better than the competition. And again, the advice previously about technology, this is the time to invest in making that experience better. And if you can afford to get into mergers and acquisitions, this is a great time to buy a staffing company, buy a recruiting firm, because there's a lot of owners who have been through multiple recessions and they're looking at this going, I don't want to do this again. So can you come in and say, be the white knight saying, hey, let's give you a nice earnout. Let's transition the business, and for a very low capital investment, take over their book of business. Give them an exit strategy and you a growth strategy as we come out of this and the staffing industry grows back to where it was before, and then probably even more. All right, the next article was from Signature Analytics, and this is a consulting company that deals more with small businesses. So everything so far was written primarily for big employers. So if your clients are big employers, those articles are great for them. For a lot of people who are listening today, you may be in a smaller company. You're not a Fortune 500 or 1,000. So Signature Analytics wrote an article on strategies to recession-proof your business. But interestingly enough, a lot of the same advice. Financially prepare before a downturn happens. Okay, we can't prepare before, but we can make sure our financial house is in order. Here's a new piece of advice: strengthening customer relationships. This is the time to get closer to every client, to really understand not just their staffing needs, but their business needs and their plans going forward. How are they reopening? What are their rules going to be? Are they changing the number of shifts, locations? Are they changing where work gets done in the office, in the plant, remotely? Who's coming back? Who's not coming back? What are their growth plans? You really want to know what their plan is for the next 60, 90, 180 days, so you can be working with them on their staffing plans. This is the time to master what you do best. Again, that same advice: build on your strengths. This is a time to go after competitors. If 30% of the industry is going to go out of business, you may know some of those companies whose service isn't as great. Maybe they were the price cutters in the past. They have weak margins. If you know that, go after their clients, be aggressive, because this is a time to win the business away, because those companies won't survive and you can grow your business. It's not very nice, but you can grow your business on their losses. More advice: don't let marketing fall through the cracks. It's so easy to not make it a priority when you're trying to sell, but especially as we're all selling remotely right now, we need to do more than ever to help our teams be effective in remote selling by having really strong digital visibility. Got a lot coming up on that in just a few minutes. This is a time not to get comfortable. Challenge every single thing you do, every process. Break it apart and analyze, how could we do it better? How could we do it faster? How could we do more with less? How can we make it a better experience for our clients and candidates? And lastly, maintain good credit. If you got a PPP loan, make sure you're working with your bank or your CPA firm so that you're getting the maximum amount forgiven, and they're either giving the rest back or you're paying attention to that new 2-year loan that you're going to have. If you've got clients that are stretching out your receivables, work with them so that you don't have a problem with your balance sheet of receivables getting too far out and your bank starting to go, hey, you look like you might become insolvent. You risk putting your credit line becoming an issue. All right, and our last article from the experts: Sequoia Capital, a venture capital firm out of Silicon Valley, the largest venture capital company. And in February of this year, their CEO wrote a letter to all their portfolio companies saying, this coronavirus thing is going to be the black swan event of 2020. They told every one of the CEOs of their portfolio companies, get ready. There's going to be a major drop in business activity. There's going to be major supply chain disruptions because of China. There's going to be a curtailment of travel and business meetings. They told their people to question every assumption about the business, including, do you have enough cash runway to cover not just a couple weeks, a couple months, but a few poor quarters of performance? So do you have that much cash to get through 9 months of weak staffing? It could happen. If you rely on funding from outside sources, plan for it to be cut. In the venture world, if your clients are VC funded, they may lose their funding, which may put your business at risk. You know, when I said that Uber Works got the plug pulled on them, that's VCs saying, we're not funding this anymore. So if your clients are startups, get your money as quickly as you can, because they may be in trouble. Some of the other ones may grow, and you'll see that in a second. Everybody should be looking at sales forecasts, anticipating what your customers are going to do, so you can plan your internal staffing levels and your recruiting appropriately. For your marketing, really fight to maintain ROI. This is a time to actually look at your mix of what you're doing and change the mix. Maybe you were spending a ton on recruitment marketing in February, and now you've cut the spend with Indeed and ZipRecruiter. Well, rather than eliminating that money, maybe you're going to redeploy it to other things to drive business sales leads, more employers. Maybe you're going to employ some of it to make the spend on the job boards more efficient through programmatic. Headcount. Instead of hiring people, as most venture funded companies are constantly doing, this is the time to do more with less. How can I increase productivity in sales, in recruiting? Capital spending. This is a time to examine whether your own big purchases make sense. If you're going to buy a new ATS, it might make a ton of sense from an automation perspective, or it might not make any sense right now because your cash is too tight. You need to just put that on hold for a little bit. But the opposite side of that is this is a time to be opportunistic. There's going to be winners coming out of this downturn that nobody saw coming before. If you look at a lot of the biggest .com companies of the past decade, they started after 2009. They found new ways to deliver services as the world of work changed, as how consumer spending changed post 2010. Well, clearly the world of work is about to change. We did a survey with our team this morning. We said to everybody, how many of you want to come back to the office? 50% said no. Now, thankfully, we were already a remote-friendly culture, and about 25% of our people were remote. That means double our remote workforce. And all of a sudden, all this office space we're spending money on, what are we going to do with it? How are we going to use it in new ways? And the people who do want to come back, most want to come back part-time, not full-time. So how do we deal with that? Your clients are going to be facing the same issues, and it's going to drive all kinds of demand for consulting on staffing in all new sorts of ways, more flexible staffing, more remote staffing, and there's so much opportunity for staffing companies to be at the forefront of bringing that to their clients, bringing that to employers throughout the world. All right, so those were the experts. And now it's time for some advice from the people at Haley Marketing. So like many of you, we've been big into virtual happy hours. So I just took a screenshot of some of the team during the virtual happy hour. Look at that funny face I was making. No, let's not. Let's go on to the next slide. Let's talk about some of the articles we wrote in the past. And these are going to all be sales and marketing related. And I actually asked our team to look back at things we wrote in past recessions to see, does the advice still hold true? And interestingly enough, we wrote an article in 2006, and I guess I'm guilty of being really paranoid. So in 2006, I was convinced there was going to be a recession in 2007. Turns out I was about a year and a half early. But the advice we wrote to staffing companies in 2006 was, number one, try to find ways to lock in your clients. And these are things that you might be able to do today. Can you give clients a discount, an incentive for a first call agreement or a volume purchase agreement? Or maybe a single source agreement where you're the only supplier, you've got exclusivity. And I'm not a big fan of discounting just for the sake of cutting prices, but if you can get a concession, something of value in exchange for a discount, that trade-off is totally worthwhile because it will drive your revenues, lower your cost of selling in such a way that the increased gross margin dollars more than offset the discount. You might also look to go up the value chain. Maybe you're doing virtual on-site management as a solution for small to mid-sized business, or even the big companies where you're doing it on-site. You're now doing more on-site management so that you're more in charge of the staffing function. We're actually talking about new ways today to partner with companies like yours to bring recruitment marketing to employers so that staffing companies can better stand out by focusing on the entire spectrum of talent acquisition. You may look to new ways to expand client relationships. Maybe you can be a consultant in workforce strategy, employee retention. Maybe you can become that on-site. Maybe you can provide VMS technology that you control. Maybe you become the MSP or RPO firm for a smaller employer. So you can take on new levels of relationships that give you more control over how your clients manage their staffing, which puts you in the driver's seat when they need temporary help and direct hire services. And we had the same advice that all the experts did. Look for opportunities to reduce cost without damaging your service. So as you make cuts, or as you've made cuts, just make sure they don't impede your ability to then grow as clients need to hire. Investigate diversification opportunities. Maybe you're going to get into new services, new markets, new products, that by going into new skills, new geographies. Maybe you've got a great client that loves you and they've got facilities in other geographic markets. Maybe you could follow them into those markets. This might be a good time to do that. Maybe you'll do a product line extension where you create an entirely new service, but watch out. I mentioned earlier, don't just chase the hot industry because that can burn you, because you'll get beat by the people who are good in that industry. But there may be services where you have core competencies in recruiting, in talent management, that you can bring to offering those new services. This is a time to broaden your client base so that you're not dependent on too few clients. Like if you have this dominance on a small handful of clients for a large percentage of your business, your company's really at risk. In fact, if any one client is more than 20% of your business, you could be at risk. So this is a time to go after more of those onesie twosies, companies you might not like as much because they don't represent as much volume. But just so you have the breadth in your client base, so as those companies start to hire, or as other companies curtail hiring, you've got less risk. You want to help your clients plan ahead. You're an expert at talent strategy, so get out there with them on Zoom calls, actually developing roadmaps for what they're going to do to grow their business, when they're going to need talent, what kinds of talent, what levels of talent, and where they're going to find it. It's all about workforce planning. Managing your own financials more aggressively, that cash flow, being really on top of it, having better relationships with your banks or your funding company. And again, like you've seen from the experts, we were recommending to upgrade your technology. In 2006, for a lot of companies, it was get a better ATS. Today, it's about digital transformation, implementing the app to bring your business online, implementing the process automation software, bringing a chatbot to your website, upgrading the website, using technology to make your business more efficient. And of course, it wouldn't be Haley Marketing if we didn't have lots of ideas to invest in marketing. So we wanted people to get smarter about their marketing back in 2006 and 2007. One of the ways to do that is to integrate direct marketing with your outbound sales activities. So salespeople have more efficiency, they're going to have more conversations, and they have greater capacity because the marketing helps them to stay top of mind. There are ways to do very low cost marketing, particularly a lot of the digital marketing, to open doors and keep yourself top of mind through email and social media and video and other channels of communication. Using targeted promotions, those discounts or special offers, to drive immediate response. Those of you who do skill marketing, there may be new ways to do it now. There are definitely some new ways to do skill marketing using not just pick up the telephone, but using email, using your website to do skill marketing. Getting more into education, teaching people to use staffing strategically. We have a group of companies today that are putting on a webinar called Staffing Helps, and they're offering the webinar to HR people as a way to give the HR people access to continuing education. There was record attendance that signed up, record numbers of HR people. I think there's over 450 companies, no, it was 470 as of this morning, companies that signed up to get continuing education because your clients, they can't go to training and they need to get that CE credit. So be the one who brings it to them. Develop and expand your candidate network so you can be first to fill. This is actually a time to strengthen recruiting, to be more strategic, not just to spend more money on advertising, but to build your talent network so you get more referrals, so that you reactivate candidates quicker, so that when a client does have a need, you're the first to fill. Again, upgrading the website to improve service, better integration with your ATS, and more inquiries so you don't lose people before they fill out a contact form or before they apply to a job or that you're using remarketing to bring people back to your website. Thinking about repackaging your services into new solutions, maybe bundling direct hire or offering an incentive for an annual contract on a volume of purchases, or even breaking apart direct hire into individual services like just sourcing, just screening. There are lots of ways you can offer new values by repackaging what you already do to solve new problems for your clients. Bringing your sales and service people together into the Zoom calls to talk to clients about those staffing strategies and to proactively work on those roadmaps, those custom tailored staffing plans for the next several months. Get more involved in your community where you can. There's a lot of ways to support your community digitally. It's a great example shared in ASA, a company that was helping nonprofits to source toilet paper. And then they created their own toilet paper wrapper that had information about their company. And they would get that to companies to hand out to charities. Very clever. If you're a part of the American Staffing Association, check out ASA Central. There was a great discussion with the sample marketing project. But the idea is more networking, more visibility in your community to show that you're part of solving problems. Doing more research to gain insight into your clients' businesses. This is the time to make more informed sales calls. All right, so that was the first article. Let's keep moving forward in time. And then right during the recession, we looked at 5 things that companies should be doing to get through a recession. Number 1, sort of building off the last one, helping clients to plan ahead. Your clients are trying to figure out what to do. The HR managers are trying to figure out what to do. They need your help. Get a jump on the competition using as many channels of communication. Right now, be more bold, be more aggressive, be more helpful to strengthen your positioning and make sure you're top of mind. Don't be the company who's gone dark. Be the company that is perceived to be everywhere. You really need to focus on showing value, ROI, return on investment of your services, how staffing can cut costs, how companies can use staffing more strategically to take on new projects so they can do more with less. People really need to understand the value of your services and why staffing is so essential right now. Educate your clients. Focus on teaching them to be better clients, not just to help you, because you know that a better relationship with you as a staffing partner means a better service experience for the client, not just in terms of fills, but in terms of how they use staffing, how they manage their talent function. I mean, you're really becoming a strategic HR advisor, teaching people how to use temporary help, direct hire services in their businesses more effectively to reduce cost, enhance productivity, and manage risk. And lastly, don't wait to get started. We're already 10 weeks, 11 weeks into this thing. If you're not already being aggressive on these other 4 bullets, start today, start tomorrow. Companies that got aggressive, particularly in advertising, we found they obtained 4.5 times, 450% more market share gain than companies that cut back on the things they were doing to market and sell during a recession. You don't want to be the companies that end. Those are that first study from the Harvard Business Review, the companies that just played defense, the second one that we looked at, those are the companies that took the longest to recover. The aggressive companies and the progressive companies got that 450% more gain. All right, I'm sure you're hearing this. We're not hiring. So how do you sell right now? Well, what you want to do is you want to first make sure you're asking the right questions. Don't be reactive. I see from things I'm seeing on LinkedIn, some staffing salespeople are still asking questions about, hey, do you have any hiring needs? Those are the wrong questions. Now we have to be questions about, how's your business been impacted? What's your plan for reopening? How are you getting back to work? How are your people addressing it? How are they emotionally dealing with it? Are you experiencing higher rates of absenteeism because people can't go to work because they don't have daycare, because they won't come off unemployment? Figure out problems they're having so you can solve those problems. Go back to Sales 101. It's time to do more homework and use those questions to really find the pain. It's time to drive cost out. People, except those companies that will pay for the luxuries we saw earlier, most companies need to see you as a necessity, as an essential purchase to drive cost out. Show how you reduce labor expenses. Show how you help businesses to capitalize on opportunities. They may have a hiring freeze. They may see an opportunity they want to pursue. They can't do it. Corporate said no, but maybe they can go around corporate and do it through a temp assignment or a statement of work project. Be part of helping your clients grow their own businesses, because that drives their need for talent. And lastly, again, this is the time for strategic recruiting. Time to fill matters, particularly with all the last minute call-offs. If you can provide just-in-time talent better than your competitors can, because you have proactively recruited people, you have a database of people who said, yeah, if you have a last minute need, I'll take it. Just call me. If you have built that database, you can now do a better job filling those last minute needs and start to build a relationship with current clients and with prospects whose current vendors can't fill those needs. In a recession, we want to look at branding. And so we talked about marketing is really a non-negotiable. If you lose visibility, you lose market share. If you market less, you fall faster, you grow slower. If you market more, you fall less and grow faster. There's 100% correlation between marketing and speed of recovery. The other thing is it gives your salespeople something to talk about. If you're into content marketing and you're sharing great ideas, it gives your people something to talk about on their calls. But what about branding? So in branding, you can use this as a time to really strengthen your positioning, to further create your differentiation, to show where you're the best in the world, to build a preference for working for you. It's time to really help the world see these are our ideal clients and these are the services we if you do nurses or therapists, a nurse or a therapist chooses where they work, chooses their staffing company by and large by the quality of the relationship with the recruiter. So you want your recruiters to have really good personal brands. But also building personal brands helps increase the distribution of your content on social media. So when your salespeople and recruiters have networks and they're sharing your company content, that builds their personal brand, but it increases the distribution of your corporate content. Then there are product and service brands. If there's something unique you do or create a new service that's really differentiated, brand it. There's a guy named Vern Harnish who teaches businesses how to scale. And what he says is like every product, every service you sell should have its own brand. I don't know if I agree with that in staffing. You're going to create a temp brand, an attempt to hire brand, and a direct hire brand. But you're going to have a separate brand maybe for industrial and a different brand for clerical, or parent-child brands, so you can really focus on building those product or service brands to create differentiation between your own services. And lastly, there's market brands, which is to be the strongest company in a geographic market or a target industry. All right, so we're going to kind of conclude things talking about what winners do differently. So this is going to be your take home, your to-do. Number one, don't make any of these mistakes. Don't panic. We're 10 weeks into this. Hopefully everybody's well past panicking. This is the time to plan. But don't only make your planning about cutting costs. Become that progressive organization. Don't cut your marketing. I know I'm a marketing guy. It sounds totally self-serving. But the reality is companies that cut their marketing and go out of sight, their perception is they're out of business. Their clients think that, oh, geez, staffing got cut. I know we cut our temps. They must not have survived. Oh, I'm seeing all these other companies. I'll call them. Don't slash your prices. If you just cut your prices without getting a concession in return, you're not going to be able to raise your prices on the end. So even if you give discounts because you got a PPP loan, let clients know I'm giving you a discount because I'm basically giving you my money. I'm giving you my free PPP money because you're a great client, so I'm giving it to you. But I can only give it to you until the PPP runs out, and then I need to go back to my regular markups. Don't just jump into a hot new market or industry because you won't be as good at it as somebody else that's focusing on their core competencies. Focus on yours. And don't do nothing because you assume, well, it's going to get better soon. Maybe it will. Maybe we'll have that V. Maybe we'll have the Nike swoosh. But the companies that are progressive, the companies that have a game plan that don't panic, they plan, are going to survive. So your plan, what's it all about? Number one, or in this side, is to play defense. Get prepared as much as you can before you see more of a downturn in your business. There may be more cuts coming. I heard a lot of people say, what you do in the next 45 days is your future. Anything that's non-essential, once you've analyzed every process, you cut things that are non-essential. You automate and streamline everything else that you're doing to make it more efficient, to make it a better experience. You really strengthen the customer relationships. You build a bigger network of people you know, so you have more decision makers you're talking to. You're delivering value at a new level. You're able to provide higher level, more strategic services and more consulting advice. You're filling a wider range of jobs for your clients. Where you can, sign long-term contracts, give people those incentives to sign a longer deal. Build on your strengths, become unbeatable, or better yet, irreplaceable as a strategic partner to your client. You are a part of their HR department they can't live without. I was talking with a company in Charlotte yesterday, and they, in addition to staffing, they do some managed services. They said, in our managed services division, we run the assembly lines for our clients. We sit in every planning meeting. We set the production requirements. We couldn't be more of a strategic partner if we tried. We're accountable for results. Now, not everybody can jump into doing that, but a staffing company, you can do a lot more than fill job orders. You can jump in and work with the hiring manager to say, how do we help you set the production quotas? How do we help you assure access to the talent? How do we help you meet your goals and be successful with the right talent at the right time? How do we get started now? Build a cash cushion, save as much as you can, because if this is going to take a long time, you may invest some, save some, but you need the cash because there's going to be ups and downs in your business. Don't get comfortable. What works today may not work tomorrow. Constantly challenge your assumptions, and also don't get comfortable so that you can play offense as well. Market, market, market. Maximize your visibility. Be seen everywhere online. Email, social media, paid advertising, Google for SEO. If there are industry association sites, be there. Be everywhere your clients are and your candidates are online. Invest to improve your efficiency, as we've talked about a couple of times already. It's maybe a time to top grade your own talent. There's A+ players in the market right now. If your business is doing well, this is a time to bring them on. Look at R&D, creating new products, new staffing services, or digital transformation, getting into the online staffing world or process automation, so you can do more with less. Build around your core focus by getting better at recruiting, faster at filling, consistently providing better talent, better quality assurance, better service experience. And if you can, pursue mergers and acquisitions. This is a time to look at buying companies. Marketing in a recession, a couple final tips. We're going to think about 3 slides left. Broaden that client base so you're not dependent on key accounts. Make a list of companies you're going to go after. With your existing clients, ask your team, what else can we do to help them get through the next several months, quarters, and years? Automate to improve that candidate experience. Candidate experience, client experience, that is marketing. Look at new business models. Change the product that is staffing. Maybe it's online staffing. Maybe it's remote on-sites. Maybe it's actually managing hybrid talent functions where people work in office and remotely. Go deeper with your clients to help them plan ahead. And again, I'll apologize for the redundancy, but I want to be redundant to keep you thinking about all the different ways to put this stuff together. And create your marketing strategy. Segment your clients based on their psychology. Who's going to curl up into a ball? Who's going to get super aggressive? Who's going to want to help you make plans? Talk to your clients to figure out how they're going to react and sell to them appropriately. Improve your sales efficiency by integrated marketing with how you sell. Use new tools and more tools, email, pay-per-click advertising, social media, even direct mail, because people aren't getting any direct mail. Use that to stay top of mind. Consider bundling your service or creating those incentives for purchase. Skill market to make sure everybody you have that's an A+ candidate, you find them a home. Get a reputation for doing more to help people find work, so that brings better candidates to you. Become a resource for your clients with content marketing, blogging, doing webinars like this, maybe doing a podcast, emailing great content, but be a resource for your clients to teach them how to survive and thrive in the coming months. My favorite advice, choose not to participate. Make the recession the other guy's problem. Get more aggressive. focus on the places where you can add the most value, invest in training and product development to crush the competition. And lastly, make the recession not my problem, the other guy's problem. Unless you're a big international global company, you're dependent not on what the economy in entirety does, you're dependent on what your clients do and what your salespeople do to bring in new clients. Target those weaker competitors. Increase the volume of sales activity with that smart integrated process. Hire away top employees to build the best sales team, the best recruiting team. To maybe go into a new skill discipline by bringing in A+ level talent and recruit more to become faster. All right, and lastly, we have a few minutes left for Q&A, but I know this is a replacement for our face-to-face trade show, a conference. So, I want to invite everybody to stop by our booth. So we had some fun. We put together a trade show booth, and there's all kinds of fun things there. So you can go to booth.haleymarketing.com. You actually can watch this presentation again. We've got a recording of lots of webinars. We've got tons of educational information on the shelves there. We've got some information on our products. You can sign up to talk to us. You can watch demos of products. So it's all at the trade show booth. So please stop by after the show, and we've got about 5 minutes left for some Q&A. Now everybody's being quiet, so either you're being shy or I've cut into your lunch. But since we have the last 4 minutes, I'll answer one question that I've been commonly getting is, David, you just gave us a ton of ideas. Where do we start? And one place I would say is start by just looking at your core competencies. What are you really good at? What kinds of recruiting? What kinds of consulting? Do your people really know how to sell the value of staffing, or do you have to train them more? What kinds of clients do you serve? What industries are your strengths? Start identifying those strengths so you can figure out how to build around the strengths. Don't just assume anything or don't pursue something that's not really a strength. Start with your core competencies and go from there, and then put together that game plan. And Laura, before I go on to any other common questions, anything else coming in from the audience?
Hi, David, this is Lana. All we have for you is compliments on a great presentation. So we've got a lot of people commenting about how awesome your material was, but no actual questions. So I would just offer up to the audience that if you think of a question for David or the team at Haley Marketing after the presentation, I'm sure that they can reach out to you, correct?
Absolutely. Well, you see that little banner stand on the right? If you visit the booth and you click there, it just sends an email to me and we can schedule some time to chat.
That's very cool. I like that. You should be in marketing.
This was fun.
David.
This is definitely a fun project.
David, thank you so much, not only for presenting today, but for being such a loyal and enthusiastic supporter of our state associations. We really appreciate it. And everyone, we're going to go ahead and end this session, and we will be taking a lunch break. We'll be back at 1 o'clock with Jamie Glanz from Assurance. So thank you so much, David. Have a good day.
Thanks, Lana. Thanks, everybody, so much.
Bye-bye.